She had no idea what lay behind the rusted doors of the abandoned missile base. Ellie, a mechanic with a knack for uncovering hidden treasures, thought she was simply scoping out a forgotten place. But when the power flickered to life, and the ground beneath her feet hummed with energy, her world shifted. What was once a relic of the past became the key to her future. Little did she know, she was about to unlock secrets far beyond her wildest imagination. Before we dive in, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you're into stories that blend mystery, adventure, and a touch of the unknown, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's tale might just leave you breathless. Let's get started. Ellie had always been drawn to old, forgotten things. As a mechanic, she spent most of her life resurrecting rusted engines, fixing what others thought was lost. But today, standing at the entrance of an old missile base hidden deep in the woods, Ellie could feel a strange excitement ripple through her chest. This wasn't like any other project she'd taken on before. The air was thick with dust, and the overgrown vines twisted around the steel doors like they were trying to hold them shut forever, the kind of shutout only time could enforce. The rumors about this place were legendary. The missile base had been decommissioned decades ago, with its exact purpose and contents becoming nothing but whispering shadows in the nearby town. Locals talked about it in hushed voices, warned off from even walking too close. But to Ellie, that only made it more appealing. She was used to the thrill of fixing the impossible, and whatever was hidden inside this old base seemed like a mechanical masterpiece waiting to be uncovered. She crouched in front of the enormous metal door, her gloved hands working over the intricate lock. It had rusted over the years, but with the right tools, she was sure she could get it open. Her breath clouded the cold morning air as she worked, twisting and turning the rusted mechanism. With a click, the lock released, and the door creaked open, revealing a pitch-black interior. Ellie hesitated for a moment. Something felt off. Her instincts were tingling, but she ignored them. She wasn't the type to back down from a challenge, no matter how unnerving. Stepping inside, her flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing endless corridors lined with old, crumbling concrete. The smell of mildew and stale air filled her lungs, but there was also something else beneath the musty scent, something metallic and mechanical that made her heart race. The sound of her boots echoed in the silence as she made her way through the maze of hallways. Everything in here was old, the walls were cracked, the paint peeling away, but there was a strange sense of order to it all. Ellie could feel it in the air, like something was waiting to be brought back to life. It was almost as if the base had been frozen in time, waiting for someone to awaken it. Turning a corner, she stumbled upon a control room. The dusty windows were cracked, but Ellie could still see a row of ancient consoles covered in grime. There was no way this equipment was still functional, but as a mechanic, she couldn't resist. She approached the console, her fingers brushing over the cold surface, and to her surprise, the lights flickered on. A low hum reverberated through the walls, the power surging like a heartbeat beneath her feet. Ellie blinked in disbelief. She hadn't expected anything to work, not after all these years. But it wasn't just the lights. The room began to come alive. The old monitors blinked, showing strange data she couldn't decipher. The system was alive. The place had power. Somehow, after all this time, it was running, waiting for someone to activate it. Her pulse quickened as the reality of what she had just done sank in. This was no ordinary missile base. Ellie wasn't just standing in an abandoned relic of the Polygon past. She had triggered something far bigger. Something that could change everything. She stepped back, her mind racing. What had she just uncovered? And who else knew about this place? As the power pulsed through the facility, Ellie realized that her discovery was just the beginning. There was no turning back now. She had unlocked something, and whatever it was, she had to see it through to the end. Ellie's pulse thudded in her ears as she stood in the control room, the hum of machinery filling the once silent air. The room, despite its decaying walls and flickering lights, felt oddly alive. It was as if the systems inside had been waiting all these years for a single spark. Her spark. She stepped further into the room, her eyes drawn to a massive console in the center, its buttons faded but still holding an undeniable allure. The power was on, and Ellie had a feeling that the secrets of this place were just beginning to unravel. Her mind raced with questions. What kind of facility was this? It certainly wasn't just a missile base, not with the strange array of equipment now blinking on the monitors. Some of it seemed far too advanced for something built decades ago. As a mechanic, Ellie was no stranger to old tech. But this was something else. The more she stared at the screens, the more she felt the urge to dig deeper. Her fingers hovered over the console, unsure whether to proceed or step back. But her curiosity pushed her forward. She pressed a button. A low mechanical whine filled the room, followed by the sound of heavy metal grinding. The lights above flickered again, then stabilized. The sound of the base's ventilation system started, hissing and rumbling as it came to life. Ellie looked around. The room felt warmer now, the air less stale, and the base seemed to breathe again. The temperature was rising, and the atmosphere had shifted from cold and abandoned to something far more intense. The screens blinked once more, now showing detailed schematics of what Ellie assumed were the base's inner workings. Some were familiar, a few mechanical systems she could recognize, hydraulic pumps, motors, cooling systems, but others were far more cryptic. Numbers and codes scrolled rapidly across the screens, like a language she didn't understand but desperately wanted to. Then, one screen caught her eye. It showed a map of the facility, with a large section labeled Classified, Central Core. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. The core? What was it? She couldn't ignore it. She had to find out more. There was no going back. The deeper she went, the more it felt like something important was waiting for her in that core, something no one had dared to touch for years. But why? With a deep breath, Ellie pulled up the central core's schematics. It was located deep beneath the base, beyond several reinforced levels, in what appeared to be a heavily secured section. The passageways to it were labyrinthine, and the system was locked down with multiple security layers. Ellie grinned to herself. She was used to working with complicated machinery, and this was just another puzzle to solve. But there was something else in the air now, a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. The voice, low and calm, crackled through the speakers again, and Ellie froze. "Operator," it said, its tone eerily familiar, yet emotionless. "Access granted. Proceed with caution." Ellie's skin tingled. This was no simple facility. It was a vault, and she had just been granted access to its deepest secrets. She shook her head, trying to dispel the unease that had started to take root in her stomach. But a part of her intuition told her that this wasn't just about fixing an old facility or even discovering a long-lost treasure. There was something bigger here, something powerful, and it was about to reveal itself to her. Turning on her heel, Ellie made her way out of the control room, her mind racing. Each step, forward, took her further into the heart of the base, into its mysteries. The hum of the power systems grew louder as she descended deeper, and the air grew cooler, the walls more foreboding. She passed another set of heavy, bolted doors, marked, "Authorized personnel only," a warning, no doubt, but one she wasn't willing to heed. Her hand hovered over the next set of controls. She didn't know what was behind those doors, but she knew that this was what she had been waiting for. Whatever it was, it had been sealed away for decades, and now Ellie had the key. The passage was narrow, the walls lined with rusted pipes and cables that twisted around the room like veins beneath the surface. Ellie's flashlight cast long, flickering shadows, and the soft hum of machinery surrounded her, almost like the pulse of an ancient machine awakening from a long slumber. The deeper she went, the more the air felt heavy, with something she couldn't quite explain. There was a palpable tension in the silence, an energy that seemed to thrum in her chest. Ellie reached another door, this one large and made of solid steel. Its surface was smooth, with no handle, no obvious way to open it. But as she stood there, inspecting the sealed entrance, she felt the strange weight of the base's secrets pressing in on her. The classified core, this was what she had come for, what had called her deeper into the bowels of the base. She couldn't stop now. Her hand went instinctively to the control panel beside the door. The screen displayed only a simple message: "Enter access code." Ellie felt a shiver run down her spine. She hadn't been given an access code, and she had no idea how to crack the system. But then, like a puzzle piece falling into place, the voice from the speakers crackled to life again, almost as if it had been waiting for her to make a move. "Access code is 4239. The voice was flat, emotionless, but it sent a chill through her body. Ellie didn't question how it knew what she needed. She typed in the numbers without hesitation. With a soft mechanical whir, the door slid open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The light flickered, and Ellie stepped inside, her boots echoing on the cold floor. The room was enormous, filled with massive machines and large cylindrical tanks that hummed with latent power. A series of computers lined the walls, their screens blinking sporadically. But it wasn't the technology that made Ellie stop in her tracks. It was the central structure of the room. A colossal, towering core. Something she couldn't even begin to identify. The core was surrounded by a containment field, and at the center of it all was an intricate, rotating mechanism. The entire structure seemed alive, pulsing with energy, and Ellie's heart raced. This was no ordinary missile silo. This was a power source, and by the looks of it, it was operational. "What is this place?" Ellie whispered to herself, her words echoing in the silence. Her fingers hovered over the nearest console, but before she could make a move, the voice crackled through the speakers again. "Initiate activation sequence." Ellie hesitated. The air in the room felt dense, the pressure mounting. It was as though the base itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to decide. This was the moment she had been waiting for. But it wasn't just about unlocking a mystery anymore. Whatever this core was, it was more than she could comprehend. And now, she had the power to activate it. With a deep breath, Ellie pressed the flashing button labeled "Activate." The hum of the core grew louder, and a deep vibration shook the room. The ground beneath her feet rumbled as the central mechanism slowly began to spin. The lights overhead flickered, casting long shadows across the room, and Ellie's heart hammered in her chest. The power that radiated from the core was immense, far beyond anything she had ever encountered. Suddenly, a series of screens flickered on, showing data and readings that made no sense to her. But in the center of one screen, there was a single, ominous line of text that sent a shock through Ellie's body. "Global Command. Code Red." Her pulse spiked. Global Command? Was this a weapon? Was she triggering something far worse than she realized? The implications of what she had just activated were beyond anything she had ever imagined. Ellie's fingers trembled as she tried to process what she was seeing. She had no idea what kind of power she had just unlocked, but one thing was clear. This was far from the simple missile base she had thought it was. This was a global-scale operation, and it was still fully functional. Her mind raced. What was the core designed for? Why had it been sealed away all these years? And why had it been left to her to awaken it? She had to get answers. She couldn't leave now, not without understanding what she had just unleashed. Ellie stood frozen, her eyes locked on the screen displaying the ominous message, "Global Command, Code Red." A chill ran down her spine as the room seemed to hum with a newfound urgency. The air around her felt heavier, and the lights flickered, as though reacting to the growing power within the base. What had she just activated? What was the true purpose of this place? She glanced around, her heart racing, searching for any clue that could explain what was happening. The colossal core in the center of the room pulsed with a deep, rhythmic energy, as if alive, its rotations growing faster, sending vibrations through the floor. Ellie's eyes darted back to the monitor, her fingers still hovering over the control panel. The screen now displayed a countdown, ticking down steadily with relentless precision. T-10 minutes, the screen read. Ellie took a step back, her mind spinning. She had no idea what she had triggered, but the countdown seemed like a warning, one that she couldn't afford to ignore. Panic began to creep in. Her training as a mechanic had prepared her for broken engines and malfunctioning parts, but nothing had prepared her for a situation like this. This wasn't a simple repair job. This was something far bigger, far more dangerous. The hum of the core intensified, its pulse echoing in her chest. Ellie needed to think fast. She moved quickly to another console, her hands flying over the buttons, trying to decipher the codes on the screen. There had to be something she could do to stop the countdown, or at least understand what was about to happen. Her fingers found a series of commands that seemed to unlock further access, but as soon as she pressed them, the screens flashed red. A loud siren blared through the speakers, drowning out the hum of the core. Warning: system override in progress. Lockdown sequence initiated. Ellie's heart raced. The base was locking itself down. But why? Was it preparing for a launch? She didn't have much time. The countdown continued, and Ellie felt a growing sense of dread. This was more than just a missile silo. She had unlocked something ancient, something meant to stay buried. She turned toward the door, determined to escape and find help. But as she did, the heavy metal doors slammed shut with a deafening clang, trapping her inside. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest as the heavy doors slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing through the room like a warning. She rushed to the control panel, desperately hammering the buttons, but nothing worked. The lockdown had been initiated, and the base was locking down completely. She could feel the air grow colder, the silence more oppressive. Whatever was happening, whatever she had triggered, there was no going back now. She glanced at the countdown again. T-7 minutes. The numbers flickered ominously, ticking down second by second, reminding her of the ever-encroaching danger. Ellie's mind raced. Her mechanic's mind was working overtime, trying to figure out how to override the system, or at least stop the countdown. She reached for the nearby cabinets, pulling out whatever tools she could find, but it was clear that the facility's security systems were far beyond anything she had encountered. No wrench, no screwdriver, would help her now. The base's walls groaned and rumbled as if it were shifting into something more. Ellie could feel the weight of the place closing in on her. Her stomach churned with anxiety, and her hands trembled as she checked every panel and console for an escape route. But everything seemed locked down, every exit sealed tight. The hum of the core was now a deep vibration that she could feel in her bones. The room itself seemed alive, pulsing with power, like the base was drawing on some hidden, untapped resource. Then, the voice crackled to life again through the speakers. Warning, security breach detected, lockdown in effect. The voice was cold, unfeeling. It wasn't a person. It was just another piece of the system, something designed to keep Ellie contained, keep her from leaving. And for the first time, she realized that the base was more than just a weapon. It was a trap. A complex, carefully orchestrated trap designed to ensure that whatever it held stayed buried forever. The lights dimmed for a moment, then flickered back to full intensity. Ellie's breath caught as she turned to the center of the room. The core's spinning had slowed, but something else had begun to emerge. A massive steel door had opened beneath it, revealing a dark, winding tunnel that seemed to stretch on forever. The countdown ticked down to T-5 minutes. Ellie didn't have time to think. The tunnel could be a way out, or it could be something far worse. But she couldn't stay here. Not with the base about to activate. Not with whatever this place was hiding. Still out of reach. She ran toward the tunnel entrance, her pulse racing, and dove into the darkness. Ellie's footsteps echoed. In the narrow tunnel as she sprinted through the darkness, her flashlight barely cutting through the shadows. The tunnel twisted and turned, the walls slick with moisture, making her grip the walls as she ran. The countdown continued relentlessly, a constant reminder that time was running out. The deeper she went, the more the tunnel seemed to close in on her. The air grew colder, thicker, and with every step, Ellie felt the weight of the base's secrets pressing down on her. Her mind raced. What was this place? What had she activated? The walls of the tunnel were lined with old, rusted pipes and electrical cables, some sparking faintly, others long since dead. Ellie tried to ignore the eerie sounds of the base's hum, but it was impossible to ignore. The sound of her own breath, fast and shallow, was the only other noise as she kept pushing forward. She didn't know what lay ahead, but there was no turning back. Suddenly, a faint light appeared at the end of the tunnel. Ellie's heart skipped a beat, and she pushed herself faster, ignoring the exhaustion starting to creep in. She reached the light, and found herself in a large open chamber, its walls covered in strange symbols and markings. At the center of the room stood a massive machine, ancient, yet powerful. The core was alive here too, glowing with a strange, pulsating energy. The countdown reached T-2 minutes. Ellie approached the machine cautiously. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, a combination of technology and something far older. She had no idea what it was, but it seemed to be the heart of the base. Whatever she had unleashed, it was all connected to this. Ellie's breath caught in her throat as she approached the strange machine at the center of the room. It towered over her, a massive, complex structure that seemed to blend ancient technology with something far more futuristic. The hum that filled the room seemed to come from the machine itself, vibrating the air around her. The countdown was still ticking away, T-1 minute 30 seconds. Ellie had no time to waste. She scanned the machine quickly, looking for anything that might give her a clue about what it was. The surface was covered in strange markings and symbols she couldn't understand. But there was something undeniably powerful about it, something ancient. She stepped closer, her fingers grazing the cold metal. The machine seemed to respond to her touch, shifting slightly. A soft, almost imperceptible click echoed through the chamber, and the glowing core in the center of the machine flickered, then intensified. Ellie took a step back, her heart pounding. The power in the room was growing. Suddenly a voice crackled to life from hidden speakers in the chamber. It was the same voice she had heard before, the cold, emotionless tone that had accompanied her every move in the base. System stabilization complete. Countdown terminated. Rebooting core sequence. Ellie stared at the machine, confused and fearful. The countdown had stopped, but what had she just triggered? What was this core, and what kind of power did it hold? The hum of the machine filled the chamber, its pulse growing stronger by the second. Ellie could feel the vibration under her feet as she stepped closer to the cylindrical chamber that had opened up before her. The walls had shifted, sliding away to reveal a chamber that looked nothing like anything she had ever seen. The room seemed to pulsate with energy, as if it were alive. There were massive cables stretching across the walls, connecting to a central hub that contained the glowing core. Ellie's eyes scanned the room, each detail adding to the overwhelming mystery of what was happening. The core had settled into a rhythmic, almost hypnotic, hum. It was as though the room itself was drawing in power, and everything within its walls was being charged with the same raw energy. Ellie stepped forward, the cool air pressing against her skin, her breath shallow, as she tried to steady herself. The voice crackled again through the speakers, its emotionless tone sending a cold shiver down her spine. Initiating reactivation of Project Prometheus. The words echoed in her head, the sound reverberating like a warning bell. Ellie had never heard of anything called Project Prometheus. The name had a chilling ring to it, like something ancient, something legendary. But what was it? What had she unlocked by activating the core? Suddenly, a series of heavy metal shutters began to slide open across the far wall of the chamber. Ellie squinted, her flashlight flickering, as the low, ominous hum of the machine grew louder. Behind the panels, there was something, a large, sleek pod, surrounded by a web of cables and wires. The pod glowed faintly, its surface smooth and reflective. Ellie took a step closer, drawn by a force she couldn't explain, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approached, the pod seemed to shift. The low mechanical whine of the machine became louder, more insistent. Ellie reached for the nearest control panel, her fingers trembling as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. The voice spoke again, its tone flat and unfeeling. System activation complete. Proceeding with final protocol. Ellie stepped back, her mind struggling to keep up with the rapid escalation of events. The pod in front of her began to hum, and the air around her seemed to crackle with energy. It was happening. Whatever Project Prometheus was, it was coming to life. But Ellie had no idea what to expect. Was this the moment she would uncover the base's dark secret? Was she activating a weapon, or something worse? The pod's surface began to retract, revealing what lay within. Ellie's breath caught in her throat as the protective shell peeled away, and she saw what was inside. A figure, suspended in some kind of liquid, surrounded by cables and glowing wires, slowly came into view. It was human, well, mostly human. But the figure was altered in ways Ellie could never have imagined. The body was elongated, its features somewhat distorted, but still unmistakably human. The skin was pale, almost translucent, and beneath the surface, Ellie could see veins of glowing energy running through it. Her mind raced, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. Who was this person? Why had they been placed inside the pod? And why was this part of Project Prometheus? The countdown, which had stopped, suddenly flashed back onto the screen. T-10 minutes. Ellie took a step back, feeling a chill run down her spine. The figure in the pod remained still, floating serenely in the thick liquid, its chest slowly rising and falling as though it were breathing. Despite the glowing energy coursing through its veins, it didn't seem threatening, at least, not in the way she had imagined. It was alive. But it wasn't just a person, it was something more, something beyond human comprehension. The machine around her continued to hum, the lights flashing more rapidly now. Ellie's mind was racing. She was standing in front of something so far beyond her understanding, something that defied all logic. This wasn't just a military base. It was a place of experimentation. But who or what was the figure inside the pod? And why was Project Prometheus so important that it had been sealed away for so many years? The voice crackled through the speakers once more, its mechanical tones steady and unwavering. Project Prometheus, humanity's next evolution. Initiating activation sequence. Ellie's chest tightened. Humanity's next evolution? She glanced back at the pod, her pulse quickening. Was this the result of years of research? Was this figure a prototype? An experiment in some twisted version of evolution? The implications were terrifying. Had they been trying to create a new species? A weapon? And why had they kept it hidden for so long? The pod seemed to react to the machine's commands. The liquid inside it began to stir, bubbling with strange energy. The figure within the pod stirred as well, its limbs shifting slightly. Ellie's heart pounded in her chest. The figure wasn't just alive, it was waking up. The air around her grew thick with anticipation. Suddenly, the chamber seemed to grow colder. A blinding light erupted from the core as it hummed louder, its energy feeding into the pod. The figure inside the pod started to move more vigorously now, its arms twitching, its eyes flickering open. Ellie stepped back, feeling the weight of the situation press down on her. The figure's eyes bright, glowing with an unnatural energy focused on her. For a moment, there was silence. The figure seemed to be studying her, as if trying to understand what was happening. And then, in a voice that sounded both mechanical and human, it spoke. "Who are you?" Ellie's heart skipped a beat as the figure in the pod spoke. Its voice was distorted, but unmistakably human. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't a weapon. It was alive, and it was aware. The air around her crackled with energy, the power of the base surging through the room. Ellie couldn't tear her eyes away from the figure, now fully awake, floating in the pod with an intensity that was almost unnerving. Its eyes, glowing with that eerie energy, locked onto hers. "Who are you?" it repeated, its voice softer now, but no less powerful. Ellie swallowed hard, trying to find her words. She hadn't expected this. She had expected a weapon, a project, not a person, no, not a person at all. This was something else entirely. I'm Ellie," she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. I found this place. You didn't mean to awaken me, but you did." The figure's voice was calm, almost calculating. It was clear that it wasn't just a product of science, it was something alive, something that had been waiting. But for what? Why had it been created? What was its purpose? The countdown continued to tick down. -5 minutes. Ellie's mind raced. The choice was before her. She had activated something beyond her comprehension, but now she had a chance to stop it, to shut everything down. But she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward the figure in the pod. It was alive, but what kind of life was it? What kind of power did it hold? "What is Project Prometheus?" Ellie asked, her voice shaking with the weight of her question. "What are you?" The figure's glowing eyes softened for a moment, and then it spoke, its voice steady, but filled with something darker. "Project Prometheus is the future of humanity. But I am not just part of the project. I am its beginning. And its end." Ellie stood motionless in front of the pod, the figure inside now fully awakened. The glowing eyes fixed on her, their unnatural brightness, casting an eerie light over the chamber. It was almost as if the very walls of the base were holding their breath, waiting for her next move. She could feel the weight of its gaze, a silent pressure that made her question everything she had thought she understood about this place. The countdown continued in the background, ticking down with an unrelenting precision. -3 minutes. The numbers flashed on the screen like an impending doom, reminding her that whatever she had triggered, the end was fast approaching. The figure's voice echoed in her mind again, its words hanging heavily in the air. "I am not just a creation. I am the culmination of everything that has come before." The figure spoke with a sense of purpose, its tone calm, almost detached, as if it were stating a simple fact. But Ellie felt the weight of those words, the truth of them crashing down on her like a wave. Her mind raced. Project Prometheus. The future of humanity. What did it mean? What had she just awoken? And what was she supposed to do now? "What are you?" Ellie asked again, her voice barely a whisper. The answer was crucial. She had to understand. The figure shifted within the pod, the glowing liquid surrounding it, swirling as its limbs moved more fluidly. It seemed almost alive, yet still tethered to the machine, held in place by the vast network of cables and wires that connected it to the core. I am a bridge between what you know and what you will become. The figure's voice grew softer, almost sorrowful, as it spoke. I was created to guide the next phase of evolution, to lead humanity to its next stage, but that was never meant to be my choice. It was always meant to be yours. Ellie swallowed, her throat dry, and her mind struggled to grasp the enormity of what she was hearing. Her legs felt weak, and her heart hammered in her chest. The base was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a weapon, a key to an unknown future. And now, she was the one who had unlocked it. The figure's gaze softened for a moment, as if trying to understand her. You activated this base, Ellie. You brought me to life. Now you must decide what to do with that power. The voice was not threatening, but it carried a heavy weight. You can shut me down. You can stop the project and end the cycle before it begins. Or, you can continue and let the future unfold, as it was always intended to. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. The choice was hers. She was standing at the precipice of something greater than herself, something she didn't fully understand. She could end it all, shut down the base, stop Project Prometheus before it could begin. But what would that mean? Would humanity be left behind, stuck in its current state, never realizing its full potential? The weight of the decision pressed on her shoulders. She looked at the countdown again. T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds. It was all coming down to this moment. She had no more time to think, no more time to second-guess herself. What happens if I let it continue? Ellie asked, her voice steady despite the rising panic inside her. The figure's eyes flashed with a strange, unreadable emotion. You will see the future. Humanity will evolve, for better or worse. I am the catalyst. The voice was calm, almost sad. But you must understand what you choose will not be easily undone. There is no going back once this door is opened. Ellie turned her back on the pod for a moment, her thoughts a whirlwind. She thought of the world outside the people she loved, the life she had built. Could she really let this project continue? Would it destroy everything she held dear, or could it lead to something greater? And was she even ready to make this decision, one that would shape the future of humanity? The answer was clear. It wasn't just about her, it was about everyone, about the unknown future that lay ahead. With a final, resolute breath, Ellie turned back to face the figure in the pod. I won't let this happen, she said, her voice trembling but determined. The countdown ticked to T-minus 1 minute. She reached for the control panel. It was time to make her move. The future was in her hands, and she was going to stop it before it could destroy everything. Ellie's fingers hovered over the control panel, the cold metal under her skin sending a shiver through her. The countdown continued relentlessly, ticking down with the unforgiving precision of a clock at the end of the world. T-minus 45 seconds. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice of the figure in the pod echoed in her mind. You brought me to life. Now you must decide what to do with that power. The weight of those words pressed heavily on her shoulders. But there was no turning back now. She couldn't let this experiment, this Project Prometheus, go any further. Not without knowing exactly what it was going to do to the world. She could feel the pull of the figure's presence, its glowing eyes watching her with a mixture of sadness and acceptance. It knew what she was about to do. The base was more than just a machine now. It was a living entity, a force of nature that had waited for this moment. It had been designed for one thing: evolution, the next step in humanity's progress. But Ellie wasn't so sure that was the right path. She wasn't ready to sacrifice everything for a future she didn't understand. Her hands were shaking, sweat beading on her forehead. The decision had to be made. She could feel the power of the core building again, the energy surging through the walls. There was no time left. Ellie pressed the button. A loud, grinding sound filled the chamber as the lights flickered violently. The air around her felt charged, as though the base itself was reacting to her decision. She gritted her teeth, her eyes locked on the control panel as the countdown halted at T-minus 30 seconds. For a moment, nothing happened. The chamber was eerily silent, and Ellie held her breath. Was it working? Had she succeeded in shutting everything down? Then, without warning, a loud siren echoed throughout the base, a deep, metallic wail that sent a jolt of panic through her. The lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows across the walls. The core began to pulse faster, its energy building, as though it was fighting against the shutdown. System override detected. Reinitializing. The cold voice of the base rang through the speakers. Ellie's heart sank. It was too late. The base was fighting back. Desperation surged within her. She couldn't let it happen. She had to stop it now. She slammed her palm against the panel, pressing every button in quick succession, trying to force the shutdown. The siren blared louder, and the air seemed to hum with unnatural energy. The figure in the pod stirred again, its eyes glowing brighter as it began to move more fluidly, as though it had regained some strength. "You cannot stop it, Ellie." The voice was no longer calm. It was pleading, almost as if the figure were aware of the danger in the air. "You cannot undo what has been set in motion." Ellie felt a surge of anger, but also fear. She was up against something far bigger than herself, but she refused to give in. The figure in the pod was more than just a person. It was a symbol of humanity's next phase, and she couldn't let that future be decided without knowing the full cost. "I can stop this," Ellie muttered through clenched teeth. She didn't know how, but she had to. With one final push, her hand hit a sequence of keys in a desperate effort to override the system. The core pulsed faster, the lights in the chamber flickering wildly, but Ellie didn't stop. The countdown reached T-10 seconds. Her breath was ragged, and her pulse was deafening in her ears. This was it. Everything was about to change, one way or another. The base responded to her final command. The sirens died down, and the hum of the core began to slow. The countdown stopped. The room went silent. The figure inside the pod went still. Ellie stood there, breathing heavily, watching as the final seconds ticked away on the screen. Shutdown complete. For a long moment, Ellie didn't move. She felt the weight of the world lifting off her shoulders, but there was also a sense of finality. She had made her choice, and now, the future had been stopped in its tracks. The base was quiet, too quiet. It was over, at least for now. Ellie exhaled slowly, stepping back from the control panel. She had no idea what she had just prevented. She had no idea what the world would look like after this. But for now, at least, the choice was hers, and she had chosen to stop it. As the lights dimmed and the silence of the base settled around her, Ellie allowed herself a moment to breathe, to process what she had done. There was no going back now. Ellie's legs felt weak as she stepped away from the control panel. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just moments ago. She looked around, half expecting the base to spring to life again, to fight back in some way. But the hum of the core had stopped, the air was still, and the oppressive energy that had filled the room moments before had dissipated. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ellie allowed herself to breathe. It wasn't over, at least. Not completely, but she had bought herself some time. Time to figure out what to do next. Time to understand what she had just prevented. And perhaps, time to find a way out of this labyrinthine base. The figure in the pod, once twitching and alive with energy, now lay still, the faint glow of its eyes dimming. Ellie couldn't help but feel a strange sense of sympathy for it. It wasn't just a weapon, as she had originally feared. It was a creation, a living being, and it had been trapped here for who knew how long, waiting for the moment to awaken. As she stood there, staring at the dormant figure, a wave of exhaustion washed over her. She had been running on adrenaline for so long that she hadn't allowed herself to consider the emotional toll of what she had just done. She had stopped the base, stopped Project Prometheus, but at what cost? What had she unleashed by simply activating the system? What other dangers had she triggered that she wasn't yet aware of? Ellie turned back to the control panel, her fingers trembling as she ran them over the keys. She needed to gather information. She needed to know exactly what had been planned here, what kind of project she had just interrupted. The system had fought her. She had no doubt that whatever the base was designed for was far from benign. The screen flickered, then came to life, showing a list of files and data logs she hadn't seen before. She skimmed through them quickly, her heart sinking as she read the terms that appeared. Project Prometheus, Humanity's Evolutionary Leap. Protocol. Activation of Next-Generation Genetic Enhancement. Objective. Transformation of human DNA through advanced biological and mechanical fusion. Ellie's hands shook. This wasn't just an experiment. It was a form of forced evolution. The figure in the pod wasn't just the first of many. It was the result of a terrifying plan to change what it meant to be human. It had been created as part of a broader scheme to fuse technology with biology, to create something beyond the reach of normal human limitations. What have I done? Ellie whispered to herself, staring at the screen. She had shut it down. Yes, but not before unlocking the deepest secrets of the base. The project had been more than a military weapon. It was a new world order, a shift in the very fabric of humanity. Her stomach churned at the thought. Ellie had stopped the machine. But had she stopped the idea itself? Could it be that easy? Had she truly averted the disaster? Or had she merely delayed it? The voice crackled to life again, startling Ellie. The mechanical tone was back, cold and emotionless. Shutdown sequence complete. System neutralized. But Project Prometheus is only dormant. Reinitiation possible. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. Dormant? The project wasn't gone, it was just waiting. If the base could be reactivated, if anyone else found it, they would be able to continue what she had stopped. The danger wasn't over. It was simply delayed. Ellie's eyes scanned the room. There had to be a way to make sure Project Prometheus never saw the light of day again. She couldn't just leave it here. Not like this. But what could she do? The base was massive, its systems complex. Even if she shut down the core, there was no way of knowing how much of the project was still in place, buried beneath layers of security and hidden technology. A loud clang echoed from somewhere deeper within the base, drawing her attention. Ellie turned toward the sound, her heart skipping a beat. She wasn't alone. The figure emerged from the shadows, a man whose movements were jerky and unsettling. His eyes glowed faintly, a strange mechanical quality to his every step. His face, though human, was pale and worn, and his clothes were ragged, as if he had been living in the base for years. Ellie's breath caught. He wasn't just a survivor of the project, he was part of it. The man's eyes flicked to the control panel she had just deactivated, a faint smirk forming on his lips. "You shouldn't have done that." His voice was hoarse, but the words sent a chill down Ellie's spine. "You've awakened something you can't stop." Ellie stepped back, her mind racing. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to steady her voice. The man's gaze didn't waver. "I'm the one who was supposed to finish this. I was Project Prometheus." The words hit her like a punch. Project Prometheus? The base had been hiding more than just weapons. This man, this thing, was part of a plan to alter humanity, and she had just interfered. He took a step toward her, his eyes glowing brighter. "You think you stopped it, but the project is far from finished." Ellie's fingers curled into fists, a mixture of fear and anger rising in her chest. She couldn't let him continue. Whatever he was planning had to end now. But how? "You can't stop what's already started." The man's grin widened as he backed into the shadows, his words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Ellie stood motionless, as the man retreated into the darkness, his words echoing in her mind. "You can't stop what's already started." The weight of his statement settled over her like a storm. She had thought shutting down the project was enough. She was wrong. The base was far from silent. The figure in the pod still lay dormant, the power humming softly around her. She had made the choice to stop it, hadn't she? But now, with the appearance of the strange man, she wasn't sure if she had done the right thing. Her heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't let Project Prometheus continue. She had already deactivated the core, but it seemed that wasn't enough. The man wasn't the only danger in the base. If the systems could be reactivated, if anyone else found the place, there was a chance the project could continue. Ellie took a deep breath and turned toward the control panel again, her mind spinning. She had one choice left: shut everything down completely, or risk the project's return. Her fingers hovered over the emergency shutdown. If she completed it, it would be over. But what if this wasn't enough? She couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. Still, it was the only chance she had to end it once and for all. With one final breath, Ellie made her decision. The air in the chamber was thick with tension. Ellie's fingers hovered over the emergency shutdown panel, every part of her body screaming to act, to end this madness once and for all. She had already made the choice to stop Project Prometheus, but the words of the mysterious man who had appeared in the shadows still echoed in her mind. You can't stop what's already started. For a moment, Ellie stood frozen, paralyzed by the weight of the decision she was about to make. The sirens that had once blared throughout the base were now silent, and the energy from the core seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, still alive, still waiting. She knew that whatever action she took would not just stop the project, it would seal her fate. Ellie took a deep breath and pressed the button. The emergency shutdown was initiated, and for a split second, she thought she might have failed. But then the room flickered. The hum of the core slowed, its energy dissipating, and for the first time since she entered the base, the air felt still. The lights dimmed. The room fell silent. Ellie stood there, her chest heaving with relief and exhaustion, her heart pounding in her ears. She had done it. She had stopped the project. She had sealed the base, and the core had finally powered down. But as she stepped back from the panel, her eyes caught something she hadn't expected. The figure in the pod, what she had once believed was a passive, dormant creation, was beginning to move again. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. The figure's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly. For a moment, Ellie thought she was imagining it, but then the figure's mouth parted, and it spoke in a voice that sounded both human and otherworldly. It's not over. Ellie's heart dropped. The base had fallen silent, yes, but the future had only just begun. The figure in the pod wasn't a victim of Project Prometheus. It was its very embodiment. As Ellie backed away, she realized one thing. She hadn't stopped anything. She had only delayed the inevitable. The battle had just begun. The door to the chamber slammed shut behind her, locking her in.